5 years ago, I planted bee balm right next to my favorite peony, a $60 peony that had been blooming beautifully for 6 years. Deep pink double flowers the size of softballs every May, perfectly healthy, perfectly happy in that spot. By the second summer, the bee balm's underground runners had grown directly through the peony's root ball. I could not remove the bee balm without digging up the peony. I tried. I killed them both. $60 and 6 years of growth destroyed. Because I put two plants next to each other that should never share the same bed. That mistake was one of 11 I have made over 30 years of gardening. Every single one cost me money, plants, or time I will never get back. And the thing that frustrates me most is that none of these mistakes had anything to do with neglect. I was watering, I was feeding, I was doing everything right, except putting the right plants next to each other. That is the invisible skill nobody teaches you. Not what to grow, where to grow it, and what to keep it away from. I have been designing and maintaining perennial borders for over 3 decades. The first 10 of those years, I made placement mistakes that I am still correcting today. A friend of mine lost an entire front border last year to a problem I warned her about too late. And when she described the symptoms, the yellowing, the wilting, the slow decline that nothing seemed to fix, I knew exactly which mistake on this list she had made, because I had made the same one 15 years earlier. I am going to walk you through all 11 of these today. Every bad pairing, what actually goes wrong at the root level, and what to plant instead so you do not lose what I lost. One of these mistakes, number 8, cost a friend of mine thousands of dollars. Not hundreds, thousands. And it was not even a flower. If you are finding this useful as we go, I would appreciate you passing it along to someone whose garden needs the same warning. Here is what I want you to understand before we start. The most dangerous plants in your garden are not the ones that die. They are the ones that destroy their neighbors. A plant that dies is a $20 lesson. You pull it out, you move on. A plant that silently kills everything around it over 2 seasons is a $200 disaster you do not notice until it is too late. And the one mistake I see in almost every garden I visit, literally almost every single one, does not involve an aggressive plant at all. It involves two perfectly well-behaved plants that simply cannot live in the same soil conditions. We will get to that one. But first, the most obvious offender on the list, and the one nearly every gardener has been warned about, but somehow still gets wrong. Number 1. Mint. Do not plant mint next to anything. Mint grows in zones 3 through 11, which means it thrives essentially everywhere in the country, and that is exactly the problem. Mint sends underground runners, called stolons, in every direction, 12 to 18 inches of new territory per year, through roots that travel beneath the soil surface and pop up inside neighboring plants without any warning above ground. The stems are dark, thin, and wiry. You will not notice them until you see mint leaves emerging from the center of a perennial that was perfectly healthy a month ago. Within 2 years, a single mint plant will have runners woven through the root systems of every perennial within a 3-foot radius. By the time you see it, pulling the mint out requires digging up everything around it. And here is what makes it truly relentless. The stolons snap when you pull them, and every fragment left in the soil regrows into a new plant. You think you removed it. You did not. You multiplied it. I had spearmint invade a clump of Shasta daisies so thoroughly that separating them was impossible. The mint stolons had threaded through the daisy roots like stitching. I lost the daisies. 3 years of growth gone, because I thought putting the mint 2 feet away was far enough. It was not even close. The only safe way to grow mint is in a container sitting on a hard surface. Concrete pavers, gravel over landscape fabric. The container must have a solid bottom. not a nursery pot with drainage holes sitting on bare soil. A pot on bare soil will root through the drainage hole and escape into the garden within one season. I have watched it happen one season. Number 2, black walnut trees near any perennial bed. Hardiness zones 4 through 9. This one is completely different from mint because the attacker is not a plant in your flower bed. It might be 50 feet away. You might not even know it is there. Black walnut roots, leaves, and nut husks produce a chemical called juglone that kills or severely stunts most plants within the root zone. And the root zone extends 50 to 60 feet from the trunk, much further than most people realize. That means a black walnut at the back of your property, or even on your neighbor's property, can be poisoning a flower bed you thought was in full, clean, healthy soil. Tomatoes planted within this zone wilt and die within weeks. The leaves yellow, the stems go limp, and nothing you do with water or fertilizer changes the outcome, because the soil itself has been chemically altered. Peonies, azaleas, blueberries, and baptisia are extremely juglone sensitive. I lost an entire border of peonies. 5 plants, 3 varieties, probably $80 in rootstock before I made the connection. The black walnut was 50 feet away at the back of the property. I never even considered it. I spent 2 seasons blaming my soil, my watering, my drainage, before a county extension agent asked if there were any walnut trees nearby. There were. Juglone persists in the soil for months after leaves decompose, so even raking is not enough. The good news is that certain perennials tolerate juglone perfectly well. Hosta, daylily astilbe, bleeding heart, hellebore, coral bells, and most ferns all survive under walnuts and can actually look beautiful doing it. A shade border of hostas and bleeding heart under a walnut can be genuinely stunning. If you have a walnut on your property or anywhere near your fence line, check every planting location against the juglone tolerance list before putting anything in the ground. So far, every mistake has been about aggressive roots or invisible chemistry. But the next one involves a plant that many of you have in your borders right now. And it is the one that destroyed my $60 peony. Number 3, bee balm next to slow growers. Bee balm, also called monarda, grows in zones 3 through 9 and produces those gorgeous clusters of tubular flowers in shades of red, pink, purple, and lavender on stems that reach 2 to 4 feet tall. Hummingbirds love it. Butterflies swarm it. In full bloom, a patch of scarlet bee balm is one of the most vibrant things you can have in a midsummer garden, flowering from July into August. It is a beautiful, valuable pollinator plant, and I am not telling you to stop growing it. I am telling you to stop planting it next to things it will destroy. Bee balm is an aggressive runner that expands its territory by 12 to 18 inches per year in every direction through underground stems. A slow clump-forming perennial like peony, coral bells, or Japanese anemone planted next to bee balm will be invaded within 2 seasons. The runners grow directly through the companion plant's root system, and once they are intertwined, you cannot remove one without destroying both. That is exactly what happened to my peony. I dug up the whole area. Peony roots and bee balm runners were so tangled together that I could not tell which was which, until I had already snapped both. Give bee balm its own section with 12 to 18 inches of open space around it, or plant it next to equally aggressive spreaders. Catmint, black-eyed Susan, or Russian sage, that can compete and push back. Plants that match each other's energy survive together. Plants where one is a runner and the other is a clump former always end the same way. Now, everything so far has been about aggressive roots physically invading their neighbors. The next one is quieter, no runners, no physical contact at all. A plant that poisons its neighbors without ever touching them. And it is something a lot of you have in your borders right now. Number 4. Fennel near most perennials. Bronze fennel and sweet fennel grow in zones 4 through 9, producing those tall, feathery plumes of foliage, bronze or bright green, topped with flat clusters of tiny yellow flowers that reach 4 to 5 feet at maturity. They look magnificent in a mixed border, dramatic, airy, architectural. The problem is what they do underground. Fennel roots release compounds that inhibit the growth of neighboring plants. It is a mild version of the same allopathic effect as black walnut, not lethal, but measurably suppressive. Most flowers, herbs, and vegetables planted within 18 inches of fennel grow noticeably smaller and produce fewer blooms. I had a row of coreopsis next to bronze fennel for 2 full seasons. Coreopsis, those bright golden yellow daisy-shaped flowers that normally bloom non-stop from June through September on stems about 18 to 24 inches tall. The coreopsis, right next to the fennel, produced half the flowers of the same variety planted 20 feet away in identical conditions. Same sun, same soil, same water, half the bloom. I moved the coreopsis, and the following year it recovered completely, which confirmed the fennel was the cause. Plant fennel in an isolated spot at the end of a border or in its own container where its root chemistry cannot reach anything else. And here is one more thing most people miss. If you grow dill anywhere in your garden, keep it at the opposite end from fennel. Dill and fennel cross-pollinate freely, producing hybrid seeds that grow into plants that are neither good dill nor good fennel. Useless offspring from 2 parents that should never have been neighbours. That is force mistakes down, and something important has shifted. The first 3 were about brute force, roots invading, chemicals killing. But from here, the damage gets subtler. The next 2 mistakes involve plants that do not invade or poison anything. They simply block what their neighbours need to survive: light, air. And those quiet killers are harder to diagnose because the victim looks like it just stopped trying. Number 5. Tall phlox planted behind low sun lovers. Garden phlox, the tall variety called Phlox paniculata, grows in zones 4 through 8 and reaches 3 to 4 feet tall, with those dense dome-shaped clusters of fragrant flowers in pink, purple, white, and lavender that bloom from July through August. A gorgeous plant, but it casts a wide, dense shadow behind it on the north side. A low sun-dependent perennial like coreopsis, lavender, blanket flower, or dianthus planted behind tall phlox on the north or northwest side gets progressively shaded out as the phlox reaches full height in midsummer. The low plant stretches toward light, stops blooming, and eventually declines. I lost a row of blanket flower this way. Blanket flower, those red and gold bicolor daisies on 12 to 18-inch stems that bloom from June through September in full sun. I planted them 18 inches behind my tall phlox on the north side. In June, everything looked fine because the phlox had not reached full height yet. By late July, the blanket flower was leggy, pale, and flowerless. Full shade. Created entirely by a plant I put in the wrong position. Tall phlox goes at the very back of the border with nothing behind it except a fence or a wall. Low sun lovers go at the front with clear southern exposure. This is not complicated once you think about it. But I never thought about it until the damage was done. Number 6. Aggressive ground cover planted under clump-forming perennials. This applies in any zone, any climate. Ajuga, vinca, or creeping jenny planted as ground cover around and under a clump-forming perennial like coral bells, Japanese anemone, or dianthus will smother the crown. Ajuga spreads in dense mats of dark purple or bronze foliage, only 3 to 6 inches tall, topped with short spikes of blue flowers in spring. It looks innocent. It is not. The ground cover grows faster than the clump former and spreads over the top of the crown, trapping moisture against the base of the stems and blocking light to emerging shoots in spring. Crown rot sets in, new growth suffocates. The clump former dies within 1 to 2 seasons, while the ground cover thrives and fills the gap as if nothing was ever there. I lost 3 coral bells this way. Beautiful burgundy-leafed coral bells, about $12 each, smothered by ajuga that crawled over their crowns during one wet spring. By the time I pulled the ajuga back, the crowns were black and soft. Gone. The fix is simple. Maintain a 6-inch bare circle around the base of every clump-forming perennial. Mulch the gap with shredded bark or gravel. Do not let ground cover close it, ever. Check those crowns every spring before the ground cover has a chance to advance. And here is the thing. Everything I have shown you so far is one plant hurting another. Starting now, the mistakes change. You become the one killing your own plants. Not through neglect, not through carelessness, through one decision that is printed on every plant tag and that almost nobody actually follows. Number 7. 2 plants with opposite water needs planted next to each other. This is the mistake I see in almost every garden I visit. The one I mentioned at the beginning. Lavender demands dry, lean soil with fast drainage. It grows 18 to 24 inches tall in zones 5 through 9, producing those iconic spikes of purple-blue flowers from June through August on silvery green aromatic foliage, and it rots and dies in consistently moist ground. The roots cannot handle it. A stilby demands consistent moisture and rich soil. It grows 2 to 3 feet tall in zones 4 through 8, producing feathery plumes of pink, red, white, or purple from June through July in part shade, those soft, arching plumes that look like colored smoke rising from the border. It wilts and browns in dry conditions within days. I planted lavender and a stilb 18 inches apart in the same bed because I liked how the purple spikes looked next to the pink plumes. Watering for the astilbe killed the lavender. The lavender crown turned soft and grey within 6 weeks. Reducing water for the lavender browned the astilbe. One of them was always suffering, and eventually I lost the lavender entirely. The rule is simple and it governs every planting decision I make now. Group plants by water needs. Dry lovers together, lavender, sedum, Russian sage, blanket flower, coreopsis. They want lean soil, full sun, and infrequent deep watering. Moisture lovers together, astilbe, ligularia, Japanese iris, bleeding heart, brunera. They want rich soil, part shade, and consistent moisture. Check the water preference on the tag before placing any plant in the bed. Match it to its neighbours. This one rule would have saved me more plants than any other piece of advice I have ever received. Now we leave the flower bed entirely. The next 2 mistakes involve plants that do not just damage your garden, they damage your property. And the costs are not measured in plants lost. They are measured in contractor invoices and insurance claims. Number 8. Running bamboo planted near anything. Zones 5 through 10. Running bamboo is not a perennial flower, but it is commonly sold right alongside perennials at garden centres, and it is the single most destructive plant a homeowner can put in the ground without knowing what they are doing. Running bamboo sends rhizomes underground at speeds up to 15 feet per year, 15 feet. The rhizomes are thick, woody, and strong enough to crack through asphalt, travel under foundations, and surface in neighbouring properties. A friend of mine, and this is the story I mentioned earlier, helped a neighbour remove running bamboo that had travelled under a concrete driveway and surfaced in the front yard, 20 feet from the original planting. The original owner had planted 3 bamboo canes along a back fence for privacy screening. Within 4 years, those 3 canes had become a thicket that covered the entire back corner and sent rhizomes in every direction. The removal required a professional excavation crew with a small backhoe. The cost was over $3,000. And even after that, new shoots appeared for 2 more seasons from rhizome fragments they missed, buried 18 inches deep. The only bamboo species safe for residential gardens are clumping varieties. They grow in a tight, expanding clump, maybe a few inches wider per year, and do not send runners. If the tag or label at the nursery does not specifically say clumping, do not buy it. Walk away. No variety of running bamboo is controllable long term without professional grade root barriers that most homeowners will not install correctly. Number 9. Wisteria growing on any structure attached to the house. Zones 5 through 9. Wisteria produces those legendary cascading clusters of purple, blue, pink, or white flowers that hang 18 to 24 inches long in late spring. It is one of the most beautiful flowering vines in existence. Entire gardens are designed around a single wisteria in bloom. It is also one of the most destructive plants you can attach to a building. Wisteria vines generate enough twisting force to bend metal gutters, rip away wooden trim, lift shingles, and crack mortar between bricks. The woody stems thicken every year, and the force compounds, slowly, silently, season after season. My wisteria cracked 3 mortar joints on a brick chimney within 4 years. I did not notice until the cracks were wide enough to see from the ground. Professional repair cost $800. A neighbour's wisteria lifted a section of roof flashing and caused a water leak that went undetected for 2 months. The damage behind the wall was worse than anything the vine did to the outside. Mold, stained drywall, a repair bill that dwarfed the cost of the vine itself. Plant wisteria only on a freestanding structure. A standalone pergola or arbor at least 10 feet from the house, with no connection to the roof, siding, or gutters. Install a root barrier at planting time. A sheet of heavy polyethylene buried vertically, 18 inches deep, in a circle around the root ball to keep the roots from traveling toward the foundation. Or plant clematis instead. Clematis gives you the same vertical flowering effect, long seasons of bloom in dozens of colors, stunning on an arbor or trellis, with zero structural risk. It climbs by wrapping leaf stems around supports, not by twisting and crushing them. You might think the worst is behind us. But the last 2 mistakes are the ones that haunted me longest, because the plants do not die. They just never become what they should have been. And that is harder to forgive yourself for than a clean loss. A dead plant, you mourn it and move on. A plant that lives for years at half its potential. That one quietly bothers you every time you walk past it. Number 10. Large hosta varieties planted under shallow-rooted trees. Hostas grow in zones 3 through 9 and are the backbone of any shade garden. Massive mounding foliage in shades of blue, green, gold, and variegated combinations, with plants ranging from 6 inches to 4 feet wide, depending on the variety. The large varieties like Sum and Substance and Empress Wu can produce leaves the size of dinner platters in ideal conditions. Thick, corrugated, deeply coloured. But ideal conditions means shade without root competition, and that distinction matters enormously. Maples, beeches, birches, and other shallow-rooted trees send feeding roots through the top 12 inches of soil, the exact same zone where hosta roots grow. The tree roots steal water and nutrients before the hosta can access them. The hostas survive, but they never thrive. Small leaves, poor colour, weak flowering, slow growth year after year, with no explanation you can see above the soil line. I have Sum and Substance hostas under a Norway maple that produce leaves half the size of the same variety planted in open shade on the north side of my house with no root competition. Same plant, same variety, purchased from the same nursery in the same year, planted the same weekend. The difference is entirely about what is happening underground, where I cannot see it. The solutions are worth knowing. You can plant hostas in bottomless containers sunk into the ground so the tree roots cannot reach them. The hosta roots stay in the container's soil, the tree roots stay outside, and the hosta gets the full nutrition it needs. Or choose the most aggressive hosta varieties, Sum and Substance and Empress Wu specifically, that can partially compete with tree roots through sheer vigor. But even they will underperform compared to what they could do without the competition. You will always know what they could have been. Look, the last one is not a planting mistake the way the others have been. It is a design mistake, and it is the one that made me rethink how I plan every single border. Number 11. Self-seeding perennials planted next to formal borders. This applies in any zone, any climate. Black-eyed Susan, coneflower, foxglove, Shasta daisy, and columbine self-seed freely. Seedlings appear within a 2 to 4 foot radius of the mother, plant each spring, sometimes further if birds or wind carry the seeds. Black-eyed Susan is the most prolific. Those golden yellow flowers with dark brown centers on stems, 2 to 3 feet tall, that bloom from July through October. A mature plant can drop hundreds of seeds in a single season. In a cottage-style informal garden, this is actually desirable. The randomness looks intentional. Seedlings fill gaps. The garden becomes lusher every year on its own, and that spontaneous quality is part of its beauty. But next to a formal clipped hedge, a structured border with defined edges, or a manicured lawn, those same random seedlings make the entire area look weedy and unkempt. They do not respect your edges. They do not care about your design. I had black-eyed Susan seedlings popping up through a boxwood hedge 2 years after planting the mother plant 3 feet away. Those bright yellow seedlings tangled into the dark green boxwood looked terrible, and removing them without damaging. The hedge took an entire afternoon on my hands and knees with hand clippers. The solution is either deadheading self-seeders before the seeds mature and drop. For black-eyed Susan, that means removing spent flowers in late September before the seed heads shatter, or reserving self-seeders for informal areas and keeping the formal zones planted with non-seeding varieties or sterile cultivars that bloom but produce no viable seed. This is not about controlling nature. It is about understanding that plant behavior and garden style have to match. A cottage garden plant in a formal setting is not the wrong plant. It is the right plant in the wrong context. And that distinction, the difference between a bad plant and a bad placement, is what every single one of these 11 mistakes has really been about. 11 mistakes. Every one of them cost me time, money, or plants I loved. The hardest part of gardening is not knowing what to plant. It is knowing what not to plant next to what. The right plant in the wrong spot or next to the wrong neighbor will fail no matter how well you care for it. And what I want you to see now is that these are not 11 separate problems. They are 11 versions of one problem. Your garden is not a collection of individual plants. It is a system of relationships. Every root interacts with the roots beside it. Every canopy affects the light below it. Every plant's water needs affect what can survive next to it. My peony, the $60 peony I told you about at the beginning, was not killed by a bad plant. Balm is a wonderful plant. It was killed by a bad relationship. 2 plants whose root behaviors made them incompatible neighbors. And I did not know to ask the question. Once you see your garden that way, as a neighborhood where every plant needs compatible neighbors, the decisions get simpler and the losses stop. Most of these are fixable if you catch them early enough. Go check your borders this weekend. Walk the whole garden with this list in your head. If any of these 11 pairings are sitting next to each other right now, you still have time to move one of them before the damage is permanent. Fall is actually the best time to transplant most perennials. The roots establish through the cool months, and the plant comes back stronger in spring. One afternoon of moving plants now can save you years of wondering why something is not thriving the way it should. Which of these stakes have you already made? Be honest in the comments. I made every single one of them over 30 years, some of them twice. The one I wish someone had told me about earliest is number 7, the water mismatch. I killed more plants with that mistake alone than with all the aggressive runners combined, because I kept thinking I was doing something wrong with my care when the problem was the placement from the very beginning. Tell me yours. And if there is a pairing disaster I missed, something that cost you a plant you loved, put that in the comments too. 30 years of mistakes and I am still learning which plants should never share a bed.